Okay, we're up to Daf Samech Samech Aleph, Daf Samech Aleph, and we said that if this one of the things that a woman has to do for her child, if her husband is to nurse the child, according to Beis Hillel, according to Beis Shammai, you don't have to nurse the child. We said that if you get divorced, then you can't force. If you get divorced, you can't force it to nurse the child. However, if the child recognizes the mother and refuses to nurse from somebody else, then what? Then you go ahead and hire her to nurse the child. So ad kama, what age do we go ahead and figure out that a child would recognize the mother? We're going to see. It depends upon the child. I don't understand the Gemara's kasha. You could see, it depends. But the Gemara is going to give some numbers. Amar Rava, Amar Rav Yirmi bar Abba, Amar Rav Shlosh Chadashim. The child is able to recognize the mother 3 months. At the 3 month mark, a child is able to go ahead and recognize the mother. Kaleni, we're up to the Samech Amid Aleph, we're at the top. So in 3 months, a child can recognize the mother, right, at 3 months. Shmuel says that even at 30 days, a child will recognize the mother. Again, that you could force the mother to go ahead and nurse, pay if you get divorced, and she no longer is mechuyev al pi the halacha to go ahead and nurse the child. But if the child refuses to nurse, it's in sakana. One mandiyama says 30 days, one says 3 months. Rabbi Yitzchak says 50 days. I'm seeing Rabbi halacha Rabbi Yitzchak Shamish Rabbi Yochanan. So 50 days. In other words, it takes 50 days for a child to recognize the mother. Now, Bishleim Rav Rabbi Yochanan Kol Chad B'Chad Ki Churfei. Bishleim Rabbi Yochanan and Rav. You have different times. According to either 50 days or if Kol Chad B'Chad Ki Churfei, depending upon, it could be 50 days, it can be three months. It depends upon the child. How sharp the child is. Elul Shmuel, who says 30 days, when you find a baby 30 days old that will recognize the mother, that it wouldn't go ahead and nurse. When Rabbi Yecheskel came, Amar, Rabbi Yecheskel, who was the brother of Yehuda by Yecheskel, said, listen, don't trust what Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel. There's no time limit on exactly when a child would recognize the mother. When she recognizes, in other words, it depends on the child. You can't give a carte blanche statement, well, this day, that day, this day, that day. It depends upon the child when the child will recognize it. So Ahida Asila Kamei the Shmuel, there was a woman she was divorced. She came in front of Shmuel and she didn't want to nurse the child. Amalei Rav Dimi bar Yosef. So Shmuel said to Rav Dimi bar Yosef, Zil Batke, go check her out, go see if the child knows who she is. When they placed this woman in a row of women, they took the boy, the baby, they put the baby in front of the women. I guess they passed them along. When the baby came to the mother, the child began looking at the mother. And but the mother turned away because you want the child to recognize her. Dimi said, not the lift up your eyes and go ahead and nurse your son. In other words, you see that a baby can nurse. It's the age where you recognize. Now, if this is the test to recognize summa min hayada, how would you know a child that unfortunately is blind and can't see? How would you check to know if it recognizes the mother? Ravashi, by smell or by taste, by the taste of the milk. Okay, how long do you nurse a child for? This is all the halachas of nursing. It's very fascinating. So it's one siman Shulchan Aruch. Tanarabanan, yoinik tinoik v'hoilich at esra v'chodesh. A tinoik may go ahead into 12 months. In fact, it says vayigam Yitzchak vayigdal hayed vayigamal, and Yitzchak became older, and vayigamal. Rashi says 24 months. 2 years. Even though we don't pass like that. Mikan ve'elech, if the child nurses after 24 months, kiyonik sheketz. He's like going ahead and eating something that is a sheketz. Sheketz is, literally abominations. The term that the Torah gives, but all different things that are also to drink or eat. The Rabbi Eliezer, that's what Rabbi Eliezer says. However, Rabbi Shua Aimer, afilu arba chamishanim, even can nurse 4 or 5 years, and that's the halacha. A child can nurse up to 4 or 5 years, and pirish la'acher esem arba chodesh b'chazar. If he stops nursing after 24 months, and then he goes back, it's kiyonik sheket. So it's interesting. If he didn't stop nursing, he'll be up to 4 or 5 years. If it's depending on his health. If it's a healthy child, 4 years, unhealthy 5 years. But if you stop nursing, then even after 24 months, you would not be able to go back. Amamar, going back what we just said, if he goes back, it's like being yonik from a shekets, or min al you a stira. Okay, I would say that you're telling me that's yonik from a shekets. Listen to the following halacha. You might think that the milk of mahalche shtayim, that's a human being that works on 2 feet. So you might think that cholav mahalche shtayim, a human being that works on 2 feet, is tamei. I might think you can eat it. V'dinhu, and the svara is that it should be tamei. Uma behema she'kalta b'maga ichmarta b'chelba. A behema, when it's alive, cannot be metama. A live animal, a dead animal, of course, can be metama nevela, but a live animal cannot be metama. And nonetheless, what you're machma that you cannot eat the milk of a live animal, meaning a non-kosher animal, you can't go ahead and eat. So Adam she'chmarta b'magai, a person which has the chumrah of being the capability of being metama when they're alive. For example, guys, a nida would be metama. Ein is not a kavachaymer shetachme bechelbay, that the chelbay should be aser. So l'chayra, how do you know that the chalav, a dava yotzim and a chai, how do you know the chalav of a human being is kosher? Tamalamar, it says es agamal ki maile geirahu, hu tamei ve'in chalav mehalchish shtayim tamei. I find it fascinating, Elatar. Kind of find it fascinating that you need a limit for this. L'chayra, what was a child supposed to eat? Any mammal seems to be built into the system that a child can go ahead with. So l'chayra, this is speaking about a human. I think it's speaking about a non-nursing person. In other words, the child nursing is one thing, but it's talking about a person that's not nursing. Can you drink the milk of a human being? Guys, you hear the chilek, right? You don't need a pasuk to go ahead and tell me a child can nurse. That seems to be a double pasuk. But the fact that a human being is able to go ahead and do that, right? That a non-nursing, an adult, for example, there's one. Okay, I might think that chalav, you have different halachos. It's not equal by everything because you have chalav of a non-kosher animal versus the chalav of a kosher animal. But dam across the board is asa. There's no difference, guys, in the dam of a pig and the dam of a cow. The dam is asa, right? The dam is asa. I would say who. It says the look word who as a kimaligera who tamei ve'in dam ha'cheshtayim tamei. The dam is tamei, but the dam of an animal, but not of a chakishtayim. So both the chalav and the blood of a human being is mutter. Both. In other words, if you eat human blood, you won't be chayav kares. Because if you eat the dam of an animal, if it's dam nefesh, you chayav kares. But there's no din of dam of a human being. However, we're going to see there are halachas about it. But right now, it's a fascinating idea that the chalav of a human being is mutter. The dam of a human being is mutter, as opposed to not across the board, not the animal kingdom. Elatar. V'amrav sheishes afilu mitzvahs prisha ein boy. It says there's no mitzvah of being pirish from what? From milk. So here's the question: why did we say above that if after 24 months, guys, that it's a sheketz, we have a limit over here that the chalav is mutter? You just told me you can nurse up to 4 or 5 years. But if you stop nursing after 24 months, it's like being yonik min sheketz. It's an abominable thing. Good. Now over here, you just had a whole limit that the chalav is mutter. How do you reconcile the two? Doesn't like kash. It's not a problem. The parish, the loy parish. One is where it separates. Loy parish, meaning if it's separate from the dad from the breast, then it's mutter. But if they go directly to the source and nurse from the breast, after 24 months, if you go back, then it's a sheketz. So that's the chilek. Are you going directly from the source? That's not good. If it's pirish, if the milk is pirish from the dad, from the breast, it's mutter. The chilufoy bedam, and the opposite is bedam. If the dam is not pirish, it's mutter. If the dam is pirish, it's asa. Human blood, guys. Fascinating. This halacha. Human blood, if it's in your mouth, you're able to suck it down. You don't have to spit it out. if you take a bite of bread and you find on the bread, we're going to see this in a second, a piece of blood, you have to go ahead and scrape away that blood. Once it's pirish, it's not permitted. In other words, we all done this in our life. You feel like you're bleeding something, you touch your nose, you see blood, or you're not touching blood. So very often you'll go ahead, you put your finger back in your mouth and eat it. That's not permitted. If you feel that sweet, that distinct taste of blood in your mouth, you would be able to swallow it. Once it's pirish, it leaves you, you can't. And that's the opposite of milk. The milk, when it comes from the dad, it's asa. If on the other hand it separates, it's muta. The chiluf b'dam, kidetanya, dam shal gabe kikor. If dam is on the piece of bread, then goyveroy, you scrape it away. V'oichlo, and eat the bread. However, shpein shinayim, if the dam is between your teeth, moitzitzo, you suck it. Ve'ein echayshus, and it's not a problem. We said, going back to the Brisa, so we said 4 or 5 years. I have a tiny of Shua Omer, even if his chavila, if his load is on his back, it nurses. In other words, he's carrying it. So the Havamina, that's 4 or 5 years, or larger. He says, it's the same share. Child of 4 or 5 is capable of schlepping a little load. Amar Rav Yosef, halacha kreb Yeshua. The halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua, and that is put down in Shulchan Aruch, that in Siman Pei Aleph, the halacha is put down in Shulchan Aruch that you can nurse up to 4 or 5 years. Fascinating halacha, but about nursing. This is I find this very fascinating. This is very nagei halacha. Says the Ramah, "V'ayim ben Eben Ezra Siman Yud Gimel im chadash ha'ibor oila leminyan." Okay, that's next. No. Cholav mitzvahs, the cholav of a guy, the cholav of a guy, ki cholav Yisraelis, has the same halacha of a cholav Yisraelis. In other words, both are permitted. Both are permitted. It's nothing to do with your religiosity. It has to do with a physical mitzvah, whether it's human milk or not. So human milk is permitted across the board. But listen to this Ramah, guys. Umikol makom lo yoniku tinoik min ha-mitzris. You should not go ahead and have a tinoik that should go ahead and nurse from a guy. In efshab Yisrael, if it's possible to get a yid. Why? The cholav avodas kechavim mitamtem halev. The cholav of a goy will go ahead and it'll be mitamtem halev. It will create literally around your heart timtem halev. We know that you eat tarfis. If you eat something that's not kosher, it has a physical effect on a person. Physical effect. The cholav of a Yisrael of a mitzvah will have a physical negative effect on the person. Umoilidla teva ra, and it will create a bad teva. It'll create bad midas. V'chein leisoichel hameinekes afilu Yisraelis devar masurim. Let's say she's a Jewish nursemaid. If she eats devar masurim, then you're going to have the same effect, right? V'chein hatinak ba'atzma. If a tinak themselves eats tarfis. It's going to go ahead and damage them when they get older. There's a concept of timtum halev, that the negativity, in other words, there's the halachic permissibility, and it's permissible across the board. And then there's this extra component of, despite the fact that it's muta, there's something that's mitamtem halev. Moshe Rabbeinu refused to go ahead and nurse from the mitzvahs, right? The pet that's going to speak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu could not nurse from a non-Jew. It's metamtim b'leiv, and it affects even when we said we said that if you have a cotton oichel nevelis, it's mutter to be pirish, to go ahead and separate the child from it. So the permissibility is you don't have to separate the child from it. However, if you be aware that the child will be metamtim b'leiv, it'll go ahead and have a negative effect. What we eat affects us. There's the saying, you are what you eat. In Judaism, it's true, but not necessarily what they mean. You are what you eat. It's a fascinating concept that it's going to have to physically affect you. So this Gemara, Gemara is discussing the permissibility, whether it's mutter or asa to drink, whether milk is kosher or not, right? Whether human milk is kosher or not, unequivocally across the board is kosher. And regarding the halacha of how long the child can nurse, 4 or 5 years. After 24 months, they separate, you don't go back, right? However, be aware that when a person nurses, they should be very careful. that they should always be makbid, that have to eat something that they can't see tamim davar hasurim. As in fact, we're going to see in the Gemara, there are certain halachas about things you should not eat that are mutta completely, and it won't be metamtem the lave, but it's not good for the baby. It's not good for the baby. As we'll see in the Gemara, it's just I find this whole idea very interesting. Hanem Rab Marenos, Omer. Rab Marenos says goineach. Rashi says goineach, a person who has heart pain. Now it's not a sakonis nefashis, because sakonis nefashis anything's permitted, but he seems to have angina or something of the sort. Yoinik cholav b'Shabbos. You're able to go ahead and nurse from a goat on Shabbos. It seems to be the cure. We saw this in Gemara on Shabbos. The cure for this disease is to nurse directly from a goat. Now, this is the non-norm. Usually, again, if you're not a goat, if you're not a kid, but you're a human being, if you're going to eat goat's milk, it's going to be in a container in your refrigerator, right? So it's like you squeeze it from the udder. That's the normal way. So over here on Shabbos, the normal way would be to squeeze it out of the udder. But since it's Shabbos, you want to go ahead and do as much shinui as possible, so it's permitted to nurse directly from the dad on Shabbos. So Tanya, Rabbi Reina Shlomo, Goynech Yoinik Cholav b'Shabbos, my timer, Yoinik Mefarek. Yoinik is when Mefarek is a told of dosh, you're separating something from the place that it grows. Kla'acha yad. If you do it directly, it's like with a shinui, and therefore it's permitted. Okay. Uvamakam tsaira, like Gazu Rabbanon. In the place of tsar, the Rabbanon to make the gezerah, so therefore it's klachiyad to be permitted. Shina would be permitted. Rabbi Yosef, halacha Reb Merenis, halacha like Reb Merenis regarding nursing directly from the goat. Tanya Nachem Ish Galia Omer, Nachem Ish Galia said, sinor, a gutter, sha'olabay kaskasim. See, sometimes if you have an old house, you see in the gutter, schmutz got in the gutter, and you see things growing up in the gutter, right? You have schmutz growing there. So it's going to stop the flow of water. The water then will go back onto the roof and go into the house. So what can you do on Shabbos? Memachin beragloi bitsina b'Shabbos. Bitsina, when no one sees, you're able to go ahead and push your foot down on Shabbos. And you're not concerned with Chil Shabbos. My timer, mitaken klachiyadhu, you're being mitaken, but you're doing it with the shinoi by going ahead and stepping on it. Over Makim Pseida, in a place where it's going to cause you a monetary loss because the water is going to go ahead and enter your house, like Gazav Rabbanan. Rabbi Yosef halacha kinacham ishgalia. So I find this fascinating. Notice it said you should do this bitsina. In other words, anytime you say you do something bitsina, you're worried about maris ayin. You're worried about what people say. We've seen many times by maris ayin, afilu b'chadrish chadarim etzasa. In other words, even if no one's going to see you, it's us. So how does it help over here? Bitsina, maris ayin, afilu, if you're in your own room, which is in another room, you're hermeneutically sealed in a mayonnaise jar, and no one possibly can go ahead and see you. Nonetheless, it's us. So what's the cheshbon over here? So there's an important taisus over here to know regarding psak. If you look at the bottom taisus, that we say, I feel Akasha. How is this permitted? Right? Akasha. How is this permitted to go ahead and stamp bitsina? I marasayin is asa. I feel b'chadri chadarim. Hainu dafka beisa melacha deoraisa. That would only be when you're over an issa deoraisa. Kimoshe tochin bechama, spreading out shaytchin bechama, spreading out something in the sun where people. Let's say you walked on. You got your clothing wet. You can't spread it out because people will think you washed your clothing on Shabbos, which is an Issa D'Oraisa. Because if they see it, they'll think Shekavsa b'Shabbos, you did your laundry on Shabbos. Over here, they'll see klachiyad which is the Rabbanon, like Gaza Rabbanon, less of b'chadre chadarim. If you'd be doing an action that is only the Rabbanon, they did not ask the b'chadre chadarim. So it's a good yisod to know. The Inyan Maris Ayin, the whole Inyan Maris Ayin, that's us v'chadre kedolim is only if they're going to be chosh do for an Issa D'Oraisa, but an Issa D'Rabbanon that they might see you do an Issa D'Rabbanon, we're not worried that therefore it's sinner, you can go ahead and do it. Good, it's good places to know. Okay, Pirish la'acha esna b'chodesh v'chazar kiyonik shekets. The Baisa said that what if you stopped nursing after 24 months and you went back, then it's like yonik shekets. The kama, how long do you have to separate? And that's like, and you go back. Rabbi Yehuda bar Chaviva, Amar Shmuel, Shlosh Yomim, 3 days. Ikadiami, Tani Rabbi Yehuda bar Chaviva. It's not him saying his own svara, but Tani, the Amoira Rabbi Yehuda bar Chaviva, in the name of Shmuel, is repeating a baraisa. Tani learned in a baraisa. Tani Rabbi Yehuda bar Chaviva coming to Shmuel, Shlosh Yomim, 3 days. Tani Ramabana, Meineke Shemes Baila, B'toich Esr v'Chodesh. Now, usually, if a woman dies, if a man dies, a woman has to wait 3 months to remarry. We spoke about Yistech the Yavamis, the concept of Havchana, to wait 3 months to ascertain whether the father of the child, whether it's a 7th-month child to the new husband or 9 months to the old husband, correct? Now, if she is nursing and her husband dies, she has to wait 24 months. Right? She has to wait 24 months. She shouldn't accept Erisin. She should marry. And Esther Rabbi Chodesh Amid Beis, Dibur Reb says Rashi, at Es Tap Rashi, at Esther Rabbi Chodesh, Shemitis Aber, maybe she'll get pregnant, V'titzarech Ligmol Espina, and she'll have to stop nursing because it'll be dangerous for the child. Ubal Zeh Einu Aviv, and her new husband is not the father of her child. She yiknelo that he would acquire for her Beitzim V'cholav. In other words, in lieu of mother's milk, they used to give the child milk and eggs. So this, if it's not his child, he's not apt to feel a need to go ahead and support the child. So therefore, to avoid this, she doesn't get married until 24 months when the child would stop. He mated after 18. He mated after 18 months. It's enough for in other words, if the child nurses for 18 months, that's enough period of time not to worry. So if she gets divorced or her husband dies, 24 months or 18 months. Amar Rav Nasan bar Yosef, Hein Divrei Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. This machlokes between Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda is in fact a previous machlokes between the great Tanoim, Reb Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Right? Where do we see that? Shebeis Shammai Oimrim Esra ba Chodesh like Reb Meir, Beis Hillel Oimrim Shmona Esra Chodesh like Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Reb Shimon Gamliel, Ini is it really so? Right? The word efresh, I'll explain. In other words, you don't have to wait 24, you could wait 21. 21. Why? What's your concern? Guys, she'll get pregnant, right? If she gets pregnant, the milk will spoil. It takes 3 months for the milk to spoil. So the one that says that 18 months, it's 15 months. The one that said 21, it's 18. In other words, you don't have to wait so long to remarry, because the whole concern is the child being unable to nurse and you want support. You don't have to worry about that concern because the nursing would suffice. And and if she gets pregnant, it's fine. Ama'ula halach Reb Yehuda that 18 months. Amamar Ukfa li hit the Reb Chanina. Remukta said, permitted to marry someone 15 months. He lost his wife, 15 months he was able to remarry. The woman was able to remarry. Says the Gemara. Arisa da Abaya, the sheer cap of Abaya, Asla Kamei da Abaya came in front of Abaya, and I guess he had lost his wife. And Amalei Maule Ares Bechamisha Asa Chaydesh. I guess what about? I guess, who was this? So he wanted to know, can he go ahead and he get engaged to a mother that's nursing after 15 months? That was his shaila, right? Amalei, the Rabbi said, first of all, the Rabbi Yehuda, halach Rabbi Yehuda. So halach is like Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda is the one who said 18 and 3 is 15. So L'chayra Beis Hillel said that like Rabbi Yehuda, he said 18. So L'chayra said 18. After 15, you should be able to get remarried. Li hit the Reb Chanina la says lachach misha asa. Reb Chanina said, Reb Ukva said Reb Chanina allowed him to marry a mother after 15 months. So Abaya used all of this, and Kol came to Atli Ores. You're not even getting married. You're not in the Suin. You're not worried about pregnancy. You're just getting engaged. He asked Kamed Rabbi Yosef when Abaya So this would be very funny. It seemed to be a clear-cut, easy psak that a person is able to go ahead and be married. However, he asked the Rabbi Yosef, and Rabbi came in front of his Rabbi Yosef, and he told him his psak, that he told the guy he could be marry a woman that's nursing after 50 months. Amalei, Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosef told Rabbi Shmuel, they're both of the opinion, you have to wait 24 months. With the exception of the day of the child's birth, so 24 months less 2 days. And he had said after 15 months, so Abai had given a heta to this Aris to marry a woman in 15 months. Royed Basrei Tlasa Parse, Abai ran after this sharecropper to tell him that he blew his psak, and he ran at 3 parsais. Bimile Parsa B'chole, 1 parsa, but there was sand, which made it very hard to run. And he wasn't able to go ahead and overtake him. Rabaya, that the Chum say, if you have a Rebbe, even a pashut question, can you eat an egg with kumcha, with the kutach? Kutach was a dip. That was that famous sourdough dip of Bavel. That sounds like something not so geschmack, but it seems to be very popular, which is melchix. Even such a shaila, can you eat that with what? With an egg, right? Even that you shouldn't pass it. Tosfos says it's not a pashut egg. It's speaking about an egg that you found inside the chicken. You know, an egg inside the chicken that you may think it has a din of meat. It doesn't. Anyway, so now loy mishum the michse kapi kursa, and you don't give a psak, not because it seems like you're a chutzpahdik by passing in front of Rebbe. You won't be matzliach. You know, it's Abaya knew this din of Rav and Shmuel. I knew that Rav and Shmuel said 24 months. I didn't have a siyata d'shmaya to pass him correctly. So by mocking your Rebbe, you shouldn't pass him. Even if you know the halacha, you should pass him correctly because he knew the halacha and he forgot it. Again, we're speaking about marrying a mother who's still nursing. Again, she's nursing, and her husband died, and she gives over her child to a nursemaid. But the child stopped nursing. So the child died. She doesn't have to wait 24 months. After all, here's the heta, right? You have the heta. There's no child. The child is being nursed by somebody else, right? The child is weaned, or the child is dead. So you can go ahead and remarry. That the woman should be able to get married right away because she hired another nursemaid. So Amalu as Sapsa, there was this old woman who said to them, "Bididi Haviyuvda had such an incident. The Asali Reb Nachman, and Reb Nachman asked me, you know why? Because even though you hired a nursemaid, maybe she would go ahead and she'll go back on the deal, and you're going to have to nurse the child. So Reb Nachman did not permit her to go, even though the child's being nursed. Reb Nachman did not permit her to go ahead and remarry. Why? Because maybe he'll go back on the deal. And it is really so. But Reb Nachman Shorilu Lebei Reish Galusa, there was these almanas in the house of the Reish Galusa. They hired nursemaids, and he said they can get married right away. So it's one shiny Reish Galusa. No nursemaid is going to go against the mafia. Reish Galusa, that house was known as a tough place. So if your concern is that the nursemaid is going to go back on the deal, they're not going back on the deal. That's why Reb Nachman permitted it. Okay. So Amr Papa. So Papa said to Rav Papa and Rav Huna. Rav Papi said to Rav Papa and Rav Huna, the Aton loy tizbara meham Tanya, and don't you hold from what we learned. In other words, we said a din of 24. Rav Meir said 24. Now you seem to go ahead and say the svara of 24 does not apply. Because after all, you paskin that as long as she's covered that the child stopped nursing or is dead, or you hire a nursemaid, you don't have to go back and you don't have to go and be concerned with this, right? That's what they said. That you don't have to be concerned. So 1 second. We just recalled the halacha of Avchana that a person has to wait, guys, 3 months between marriage, correct? Before a woman remarries, she has to wait 3 months. So we bring back to you a Gemara from our favorite Masechta, Yevamis, right? So now, what happens over here? Tanya. This girl, she was married, but she was always going home to daddy. She wasn't living with a husband. Her husband was angry with her. Or the husband was in prison. Or he was overseas. Or he was old and incapable of impregnating her. Or he was sick, which would stop him from impregnating her. Or she was an akara that couldn't get pregnant. It was a kana, or an elder woman, islandess, right? She's an islandess, ukitana, from a peles, achamis's baila. And after her husband died, she was mapel. So, without a shadow of a doubt, she's not pregnant. Right? So over here, there is no reason of achana when applied. We know unequivocally that she's not pregnant, right? And nonetheless, what do we say? The halacha is like Rav Meir in his gezeres. So 1 second. So what do we see? Even if it doesn't apply, we're going to keep the halacha. So why would you go ahead and suggest that even if it doesn't apply the svara of the nursemaid, why in the world would you go ahead and permit her to get married right away and not wait 24 months? So we see, just like by Avchana, and the svara doesn't apply. We kept the gezerah of 3 months, who had been by nursing, that she shouldn't be able to remarry until 24 months pass. That's the kasha. So Amilei, Lav at that time, he told him, he told him I wasn't thinking, right? Rav Papa and Rav Huna said to Rabbi Yeshua, we weren't thinking about this. The Hilchasa, and here's the halacha. Mace, if the baby dies, muta. However, Gamaltoi, if it stopped nursing, it'll be asa. Yeah. If the baby died, then little shverlich, right? You told me the gezerah, why it should be across the board. You're making chilukim now, right? You're making chilukim. Ayin Ritva, the Ritva speaks about it. The article brings the Ritva down. You'll take a look what he says. Ma'ber Rashi Amar, afilu meis nami asa. Right? Even meis nami asa, it'll be asa to remarry. Because if you're going to allow it to remarry, we might be worried about the following scenario. Dilma katlalei, she'll kill her child. The Ozla, and she'll go uminasva. In other words, she's nursing. And she says, you know what, I really want to get married. But what? I got to wait 24 months to remarry? I got to wait 24 months to marry? So what will she do? Oh, 1 second, there's a loophole over here. If the child is not in the world, I heard that I don't have to wait 24 months. So it'd be chayish that she might kill a child. So therefore, we took away that loophole. We took away the loophole of mace. And we're saying even if the child dies, she still has to wait. However, there's a case, the Chant case, right? That in fact that she did kill the child. She did see such a case that the woman choked the child to death. It's not a good raya. This was a deranged woman. Because it's not normal for go ahead and a woman to go ahead and kill a child. So we're not chayish that a woman's going to go ahead and kill a child. So therefore, mace, it would still be what? It would still be mutta pashtus. Mace would be mutta because we're not chayish that you will kill a child. Let's say they gave she hired a woman to nurse the child. The nursemaid who is nursing, now, if the woman is lactating, probably she has her own child. So if she's hired as a nursemaid, she shouldn't simultaneously nurse her own child with this child, right? Why? Because then she won't have enough milk for both. Neither her own child, nor another child. Poska kima, if they came up with a price of the amount of food that is going to be supplied for her to go ahead and be able to produce milk, and it's not enough, then she can eat more. She shouldn't eat things that are bad for the milk. Okay, now, Fred the Gemara on the first part of the Brisa is telling me that if she was hired to nurse, she shouldn't nurse her own child nor another child. It would appear extraneous for the Brisa to tell us that Madach, she can't nurse her own child, certainly she can't nurse an additional other child. That doesn't belong, she's hired as a nursemaid baby A. So she shouldn't nurse her own child, nor baby B. Obviously, she can, I feel her own child she can nurse baby B. Says, I would say her own child, right? You know what? If she only has X amount of milk, she's going to give it for her own child at the expense of the child, baby A, that she was hired to take care of. But Mematzulate Fei, and therefore what? She'll go ahead and give more to her own child. Avo ben chaverta, but baby B, Ilav the Havile Moiser, if not that she had extra milk for the one she was hired to, plus baby B, like having a matzle, she wouldn't go ahead and give the milk. No, that once you hire for baby A, that's it. No baby, not even your own baby, not even baby B. Even though the umdana might be that you have enough milk. The price that said Pascha Kima, they guaranteed, they came up with a price of the food to eat to ensure that she'll have milk. She can eat more if it's not enough. Who has to pay for it? Rav Shesha says, Mishalah, she has to pay her own. So the last din of the Baisa was, she shouldn't eat things that are really, really not so good. My minayu, what are these things that are not so good? Amrav Kahana. Now again, this is not speaking about the Varim Asurim that I brought down from the Shulchan Aruch, that's Matamta and Delayv. These are kosher, fine foods that anyone can eat, but it's not advisable to eat them when you are nursing. Amrav Kahana, Kigoin Kishus, those are hops that they put in beer. The chazis is the small grass. Dagim katanim, small fish. Va'adama, and earth. It seemed to be the Gemara in Shabbos told us that earth was something that people would eat for certain diseases. But all of these are not good for what? For nursing. Abaya Amar, afilu kara, even squash, the chavusha or a quince. The Papa Amar, afilu kura, even shoots, the kufra or dates that are not ripe. Vashi Amar, afilu kamcha v'hasna, even kutach or fried fish, you should not go ahead with. And you should eat this stuff. What's wrong with the stuff? Minayu paski chalava. Some of them will cause the milk to go ahead and go bad. And minayu it'll stop the milk. Excuse me. It'll stop the milk from coming. Period. And minayu achra chalava. And some of them will go ahead and turn the milk bad. I'll tell you something fascinating. My granddaughter is the granddaughter of Moshe Heinemann, married to my son Yisrael Zev, and when she was nursing, she's machbid not to eat cucumbers and all. She kind of followed this. Her grandfather gave her a diet of things she should eat. And Baruch Hashem, she had two children, and they were all. None of them had what's that called when they cry all the time? They were, what's that term?
Colic.
Colicky, right? None of them were colicky. They slept well at night. It's kind of so. This is a halach l'maisa that there's a diet that women should be careful when the milk. We know that exactly what the woman eats has an effect on the milk, and even this, the effect that the colicky and different things. And I know my own daughters were just they want when they gave birth they when they were pregnant they tried to figure out what she was eating. So it was very fascinating. Okay, anyway, that's it. I'm sorry I told you it's not going to be tonight, but it was an easy daf. And thank you, Hashem. Have a great day.